It's a real pleasure to welcome to the program today Fred Trump III, whose new book, All in the Family: The Trumps and How We Got This Way, is a fascinating and, in some senses, Fred, potentially terrifying insight into a lot of what we've seen and might kind of see in the political world in the future. Just to start with something,
Sure.
when you saw the Trump brand from your perspective, how much of it do you think ultimately was because of Fred Trump Sr.? How much of it was because of Donald Trump? Like, what was your internal understanding of this brand as a business entity?
Yeah, the interesting thing, and it's a really neat question. My grandfather was hugely successful, built more apartment buildings in Brooklyn than anyone, second most in Queens. Big guy in the Democratic machine politics of both Brooklyn and Queens. But in his way, he was very understated. He wanted two things, really. He wanted a big house for his kids, and he wanted a big car.
Mm.
And he always had that. He was not the flashy guy at all, which was interesting compared to where Donald wound up. Now, my grandfather was against Donald moving his business into Manhattan. He thought our business is in Queens and Brooklyn. He was totally against it. And people have asked me, do you think he would be proud of the brand as it is? I'm sure my grandfather, well, I know he was. He was proud that Donald had that driven characteristic. I don't think my grandfather was very happy, and I know my grandmother was very unhappy with what Donald had to do in his mind and his actions to get where he is.
Mm. When it comes to the kind of origin story about this small loan of $1 million as this, footnote about how it all kind of got going, what's the truth of the amount of support that your grandfather put towards the eventual Trump empire?
The Trump empire, you meaning Donald's?
The Donald Trump empire, yeah, to be clear.
Without and keep in mind when the $1 million issue came up down in Atlantic City,
Yep.
my grandfather was already showing levels of dementia. And again,
Mm.
I'm on the record as saying I am not a doctor. I don't pretend to be, but both of my grandfathers had dementia. Several other family members in the Trump family had it. So I knew what the warning signs were. I knew that Donald had played my grandfather for this scheme. Um, and that, helped bail Donald out, much like Donald stealing my inheritance from my grandfather in 2000.
Can
So
you explain that? I don't know if the audience necessarily understands that.
my dad died at a very early age in 1981. I was a sophomore in college. Donald was named my trustee at that point. Flash forward a couple of decades, my son William, who I hope we have a chance to speak about,
Hmm.
was born with a terrible seizure disorder, was at Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan for 3 weeks in the neonatal intensive care unit, two other hospitals for an additional 4 weeks until he finally came home. A couple of days later, I'm greeted with a note or a letter from one of Donald's attorneys saying, in essence, that I had been taken out of my grandfather's will. We, through judicial findings and taking him to court, we found out that Donald had hatched a scheme to, in essence, take myself and my sister out of my grandfather's will. And here's the thing that is just beyond the pale. As I mentioned, he was my trustee. You're supposed to trust the person who has that position in your life to take care of the issues that you have. Donald
Yes.
did the exact opposite and took away what was rightfully mine. And that also helped Donald through a horrific time in his financial career. I mean, it was so embarrassing that the banks were putting him on an allowance. So between the chips that my grandfather left on the table, at one of Donald's casinos and the money that was taken from me and my sister, you know, they should be thanking us, or he should have thanked us for helping him get out of his financial straits.
Before we talk a little bit about the situation with your son, just so everybody understands the kind of family tree, when Donald, I've said that one of the few times Donald Trump seems slightly more human and connected to emotions is when he talks about the struggles your father, his brother, had with substance use, specifically alcohol.
Right.
And Trump has told a few different stories of why he doesn't drink. At one point, it was just that he was brought up in an environment that encouraged not drinking. More recently, he says it was because your dad, his brother, would say, no drugs, no alcohol. And that combined with seeing the effect that the alcohol had on your father sort of scared him away from ever touching anything.
Right.
Aside from the speculation about his use of uppers, which I don't even know that we want to get into at this point, but we can if you want to, is that backstory that he tells where he seems sort of human, is it even a real story?
No. Uh, Dad had a terrible problem with alcohol, and he was supposed to be the golden child in that family. He turned out to be the embarrassment in their eyes. Now, let's put everything in context. Virtually everybody in my family has an issue with alcohol.
Mm.
Everybody, his siblings, except for Donald. Why it was my father who was singled out, I don't know. But it may have been because, again, Dad was supposed to take over the family business. He had a dream to be an airline pilot, and he became an airline pilot, which Donald called him a glorified bus driver. So to answer your question more specifically, what Donald told me one time, and I remember it quite clearly, goes, I never drank because, or took drugs, because if I did, I would want to be the best at doing it.
Mm.
And someone asked me the other day, well, he put out a statement in, I think it was in 2019 about my father and, how he felt bad about it. My answer to that is, well, that's kind of decades old as far as I'm concerned. You were his brother. And believe me, my dad did a lot to help Donald, such as getting into the University of Pennsylvania and
Yep.
other things. Donald treated him, again, like he was the embarrassment of the family. So his statements that, oh, I'm so sorry about my little too late for me.
When it comes to your son William, you mentioned the seizure disorder, which I believe is connected to a known genetic variant that can cause that.
KCN.
Um, KCNQ2, right? You've said a lot over the last few months about Donald Trump's sort of, I'm editorializing here and you can correct me if I'm wrong, sort of uncaring attitude towards that, which when I heard what you said, and you can tell us exactly what it is in a moment, it reminded me of Donald Trump's attitude sometimes after a mass shooting where he says we just kind of have to move on. It's reminded me of Trump's attitude after a natural disaster, for example, the hurricane in Puerto Rico, where he just kind of showed up and shot paper towels like basketballs, and it was like, we're here to have a good time. It seems to track, but tell us what his reaction was to that medical situation.
Well, the first reaction, he never came to visit William when William was in hospital, and neither of his siblings did either, by the way. So I don't want to just say it wasn't done, but never asked about him when he was a baby. Donald still never met William, never.
Hmm.
To go a little further with what you were saying, and there is a pattern, and of course, I get the question: is he empathetic at all? The answer is absolutely not. I remember during that hurricane, but here's a personal story that kind of hit home with the first example you used. And as I've said, the reason my book is different is because I have personal anecdotes with him throughout the decade since I was a young kid. And I had great access to him, not just the visits to the Oval Office and certainly not just to playing golf, but I could call him at any time and he would get back to me.
Mm.
The day of the Uvalde shooting, I called him And I was upset, maybe a small word for what I was. And I said, you have to do something about this. And his answer was, there's nothing I can do.
Mm.
Um, the mocking of the Times reporter, Serge Kovalevsky, uh, mocking John McCain, who, as I mentioned in the book, sat behind me at the inauguration in 2017. And I introduced my kids to him and said, I don't use this word often because I think it's been cheapened. Senator McCain is a hero. And they knew full well that what Donald had mocked him and said he wasn't a hero. I'm just truly unbelievable. So yeah, to answer your question, to circle back, he doesn't have it in him. He doesn't want to be near people he deems lesser than him, and he basically deems everybody lesser than him, except maybe Putin and Kim Jong Un.
When it comes to lesser people, a lot has been made, mostly speculatively, about Donald Trump's views on race or immigrants, Jews, etc. Um, my complete outside view that I've assembled only from what I've seen him say publicly is that he doesn't strike me as someone who's probably personally homophobic. He seems sort of indifferent, I guess I would say,
Mhm.
when it comes to Jews. I mean, I know that his son-in-law is Jewish, his daughter converted to Judaism.
My
He
wife is.
strike Your wife is Jewish. He strikes me as a guy who maybe doesn't have any proactive prejudice against Jews, but kind of sees them as an oddity of sorts and maybe has some views about them as a group.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about from behind the scenes. Was race something he talked about often? The claims of racial slurs in private, this sort of thing.
Well, as I mentioned, there was when again I was 10 years old and the Eldorado's roof of his Eldorado's roof was slashed. And it wasn't that he just used the N word twice, is that he assumed they were black folk. When my bike was stolen and he helped me when the police found it and the young kid was there, he was adamant about throwing this kid in jail. I said, no, I can't. I mean, kid made a stupid mistake. Okay. I'm not going to be part of that. And then you flash forward to 89 with the Central Park Five. So is he racist? I, I another definition I certainly just don't know. I think he espouses what racist people or people who have views that I find repugnant follow, and that may just be politically expedient. I often joke he likes black people when they're reading putts for him on a green,
Mm.
in a ball out from under a tree. Then black people are his best friends. I am just don't get it how. And I saw a report on today about black men following him. I don't get it. I would advise them that they're being used as pawns, and he will cast them aside should he win this election.
You mentioned earlier in the interview the generally Democratic leaning background of your family.
Yeah.
One of the things that's been notable is that after a very long time, I think 68 years of being pro choice and sort of seeming certainly socially liberal, all of a sudden, the political Donald Trump, who decided that he was running as a Republican, said that he had an awakening with regard to the issue of abortion and became very much anti abortion. He has a story he tells about meeting a kid he liked that explains why. There seems to have been this complete and total shift. Can you talk a little bit about is it more that he was apolitical in the sense of who can help me and I'll say whatever I need to say and align myself with whoever?
Yeah, definitely. And in his business career, I don't think he gave a damn about any of these issues: abortion,
Mm.
race, uh, guns. I mean, he has no affinity towards guns since I was a kid. He used to say, "Oh, I have a carry permit." Okay, great, I get it. He likes to hang around or have bodyguards. Okay, I get it. But it was never a big issue for him. So I've said, and maybe I've gotten myself into trouble for saying it, is he had his populist vision in 2015, and it had started to really marinate over the years before that. And it stuck, and people were totally enthralled with him. But then he starts getting involved with people who, I use the Godfather imagery on the book of being, the Pinocchio where someone is controlling. Trust me, he had no real love or followings of religion. I mentioned gun control, really didn't, but boy, he's the big NRA guy now.
Right.
You go down the line, the Heritage Foundation, and I know somebody said the other day, well, Donald Trump, it was Dan Crenshaw. Donald Trump has said, oh, it has nothing to do with Project 2025. Believe me, I guarantee he may not have written a page of it, but he will follow it to the letter to get what he needs.
There's a picture of you and Donald in the Oval Office together. I'm curious, what's the relationship been like say since 2015? Are you in any kind of contact with him at this point? And if not, for how long have you not been?
Since he said what he did about my son, William, that he should just die. Uh, I think that should end any relationship. It's a shame. As I've said, he's my family member. I've had, deep affection for him over the years. He's done terrible, terrible things to me. I've somehow found it in myself, maybe not to forgive, but to find a way to get along. That one may have been a little over the line for me. And others will ask, why did you go down to the inauguration in 2017? When considering the things that had happened over the years with him, the bad things.
Yeah.
And for me, it's simply, he's a family member. It's historic. And it began my real national push for advocacy on behalf of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And whether he wins or loses, I will be at whoever's inauguration. And if the Harris campaign doesn't come up with what I and the people that I've aligned myself with, great advocates. I met Senator Tom Harkin the other day, just a hero in the disability world. I'll hold their feet to the fire because for me, it's just too important.
Who do you plan to vote for in November?
I'm voting for Kamala Harris.
And is it more personal or simply that the views are aligned with your views?
Not personal at all, even though I think Donald has changed and is changing, and he's going to become even more off the rails. And I think they put that out there that he will. No, for me, it's always policy over politics, and that's exactly what it is. I believe in the politics, of the Democratic Party, certainly what the Harris campaign has put out so far. She has the energy. I looked at Donald now, and he's looking tired. And I worry that he will push things too far.
The book is All in the Family, The Trumps and How We Got This Way. We've been speaking with the book's author, Fred Trump III. Fred, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Oh, David, thank you.